What's up, guys? Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking out the channel. Sorry for the quiet weekend. I, just need a little bit of a recharge, and also just figure with this whole Kyrie thing, we just let it play out and see where the chips would lie. Kind of felt like it was going to come to a resolution this weekend anyway. So let's just figure it out from there. And I'll just give you kind of my whole thoughts on, Miami's lack of pursuit or, lack of assets to really get it done. Which I think is a couple of things that it comes down to. Off of the bat, if you guys haven't heard, Kyrie Irving was traded to the Dallas Mavericks to team up with Luka for Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, and a first-round pick. Two good guys, two good players to add to the Nets, and I think out of all the packages I saw, probably the best they could have done. I mean, other than that Phoenix, Chris Paul, a reported Chris Paul, Jay Crowder deal. I mean, I think if you're the Heat, you might even give a little ringy and see what's what with that, if that's a possibility for you. But it was interesting. You saw right off of the bat that the only person who really tied Miami and Kyrie Irving nationally was Windhorst. And I think he was just kind of, giving the old tip of the cap to the Heat of going to get the whale. I don't know if there was actual interest there or what. It felt like locally, seeing guys like Barry and Ethan really throw cold water on the thing, which is in line with what happened in the summer, that they didn't have a strong interest in Kyrie Irving. Now, I wonder if that's a couple of things. I wonder if that is, one, true, or if they really did inquire about Kyrie and got shot down quick, because Miami's really in a spot right now where outside of their top three guys, what are their assets? That's the thing that you're looking around, you're finding a little bit troubling, because it really feels like any deal that Miami would get in the game for that doesn't involve Tyler, Bam, or Jimmy, what of value is another team getting? Because you have Kyle Lowry, who is owed $30 million next year. He's barely playing for Miami. You have Duncan Robinson. He's making, $60 million left on his contract for the next 3 years. He's injured. You have Caleb Martin. Caleb Martin's a nice player. I think people would dig having Caleb Martin on their team. Victor Oladipo, has he done enough to show that he can add something to the team? I think so. But could opt out if he wanted to. So not really a guy you have in control past this year. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, both nice playoff push picture guys, but are guys you have to pay next year. So it's not a ton. There's not a ton that Miami could, Omer Yurtseven hasn't really played. So there's not a ton of guys on this team that I think would be attractive in a star deal that doesn't involve one of your top guys. So I do wonder from Miami's standpoint, when they leak that stuff or they give that pulse to the local guys down here, is that really a lack of interest, or is that knowing that they can't really get in the game? Are they finding that giving up a guy like Kyle Lowry is really not going to get something for him? Because I would say for the Miami Heat not to have interest in Kyrie Irving is irresponsible. And I'm not saying they could have got him, but if the idea or if the picture they're trying to sell guys is, well, we really weren't interested. If you in any way, shape, or form could have gotten Kyle Lowry, could have gotten Kyrie Irving without giving up your top three dogs, that's almost irresponsible for a couple of reasons. One, he fits basically exactly what your need is, what you've always been hunting for, which is that bona fide playoff scorer next to Jimmy Butler, next to Bam Adebayo in the postseason. And it is an immediate upgrade on the biggest hole right now in your team, which is your point guard spot. Right now, you're getting nothing from Kyle Lowry. He's not only not been productive, but he's been injured. And if you're telling me that there's any way, shape, or form you could have kept Tyler, Bam, and Jimmy and be able to get Kyrie Irving and replace basically what you've been getting with Kyle Lowry, of course you have to pursue that. You can talk about head case, because here's the thing. You can talk about $200 million that you have to pay him. you can forget about that. The whole I was honestly in some ways, until Kyrie Irving came out and said that he was not going to play for the Nets anymore this year, I was like, I almost feel like the Nets should just keep him and see how it was rolling, because they finally were getting what they wanted with him and Kevin Durant together, which, man, Kevin Durant should never get hurt. It immediately goes to hell as soon as he doesn't play basketball for them anymore. I feel like you have to take these swings when they're available. There were those reports with Dallas getting him, and it's funny enough that Mark Cuban comes out. Didn't he hose down a reporter, Tim McMahon, because Tim McMahon said that Luka was, wanting. He told the GM he wants roster upgrades immediately, and Mark Cuban called it BS. Nah, it's not true. And then they go and make this cut for Kyrie Irving. It's fun. I mean, look, good for the Mavericks. They never pull this stuff off. They never seem to get the guy and land the Orca, and certainly will be stunned if they're even able to keep him in free agency, because that's what they really don't do. Is they make the trade sometimes, but they never lock the guy up. So it's a good move and a fun, basketball marriage to see how that really goes down there. But for the Heat, I really think that if they would have had the chance, like if they legitimately would have had the chance to trade Kyle Lowry, Caleb Martin, first round picks, and that would have made it happen. Yeah, I think of course they would have had to do that. I truly think that they probably tried without giving up Tyler, Jimmy Bam. They were shot down, because who could look at that right now? And especially especially the competing offers that you had out there. If a Chris Paul is really out there, a Spencer Dinwiddie who's averaging what he's averaging, Dorian Finney-Smith who's a really good role player. Like the Nets did okay. If you're taking on Kyle Lowry, you're taking on a guy that you don't know can play in the fourth quarter next to Kevin Durant. Caleb Martin, okay, nice role play. They have nice role players. For me, I really think that whole spin that was out there for Miami was like, I don't think we got the horses to get him. And that's the other thing that's interesting is, what is going to happen with this whole Kevin Durant thing, and where does Miami go from there? Do they have the horses to go get him? I don't really think that they do. First of all, I don't think that the Nets are going to trade Kevin Durant. Let's not forget we just did this months ago, right? Kevin Durant's still under contract for 3 more years after this year. I don't think the Nets are giving him up. And if they are, they're going to ask for like Tyler and Bam for him. And what's the point, right? So Jimmy and Durant, and that's your team. Is that good enough to win? Maybe. But the whole point is, and this is what they ran into in the summer, is everybody wants to add him as the guy next to 2 guys, not the guy next to a guy. And so I have a hard time believing that the Heat will be able to get in the game for Durant too. And that was the thing when this, people were like, oh, we'll just wait for KD. I'm like, there's not going to be a KD to wait for. There's not going to be a pursuit of KD. I'm just disappointed because, man, yeah, that I would have, that was honestly the move in the summer, because I didn't think the KD thing was very realistic. I was like, man, if you could get Kyrie Irving on the cheap and you could have, traded Kyle Lowry for him then, that's the thing that I think you look at as the big missed opportunity, is because they came out pretty strongly and it said they had told Kyle Lowry, we're not dealing you for Kyrie Irving. Well, that was after you found out what this season was going to be production-wise from Kyle Lowry. So that is almost the big miss in itself, is that you had all this Kyrie Irving drama that was surrounding the team, and coach unrest, GM unrest, superstar unhappy. Sometimes when somebody seems more gettable, you should pounce on it then when they, props to the Nets, because they did hold on to him, and feels like they probably got a better trade for him now than they would have back then, when this all seemed like a disaster, and Kyrie Irving was already dealing with the drama that he had last year coming into this year, and this before that he had drama. And I get it. He's a lot of drama. I get that. Kyrie Irving, you never know. You never know what the next thing is going to be that, sets him off. But, look, you have Jimmy Butler on the record at one point saying he's the player that he'd love to play with the most. You have a very close relationship with, you have them knowing for a very long time, Bam Adebayo and Kyrie Irving knowing them together. And I think in a lot of ways, if they would have been able to do it with keeping Tyler, I do think Tyler's been able to pick up some things from Kyle Lowry and watching his game. I think it would have been interesting seeing what can Tyler learn benefiting basketball-wise being next to Kyle Lowry, being next to Kyrie Irving. So that would have been an interesting thing, but look, it's not there. And so we're at trade deadline week. Just had a road trip that was pretty disappointing. You know, not the easiest road trip in the world, but they blew the easiest game. And so if you would have walked away from it 2-2, you would have felt pretty good. Walking away 1-3, yeah, it's a little bit empty of a feeling because the Bucks game, while they were in it the whole time, felt a little bit like the Denver game where they were in it with one of the better teams in the league, and then almost felt like when Milwaukee wanted to, they shut it down. And also, I mean, the Heat's 3-point shooting just continues to be abysmal. You know, you get doubled up from three against a really good team, and it just feels like the thing is like once they hit a couple, it's like you have to work so hard to get back to that point of catching up, you know, and it's so much easier for them, especially when Giannis is going off like he is and kicking to his shooters and executing in that fashion. It's tough to keep up. It is a tough spot to keep up, and especially when you're running up against the clock and then you're just out of time to grind out to get those points again. So that was the disappointing thing about Saturday night. But the more disappointing thing is, well, you started off the road trip losing to an abysmal Hornets team. And so the good thing for Miami is they get 3 days off to get a little healthier. No practice for 2 days. They'll probably practice on Tuesday before welcoming in the Pacers on Wednesday. You know, gotta be a situation where you look at who's coming into the building and you got to say, yeah, we got to sweep these guys. We got to take out their week is Pacers, Rockets, and going to Orlando. It's not unreasonable to think that Miami has to go 3-0 in those spots, get themselves to a 7-game over 500 mark that they haven't been to, going into welcoming in the Nuggets on a week from today. So the Kyrie Irving pursuit, while always fun, didn't feel very much like the Heat were ever in the game. Disappointing that it seems like they were never in the game for a couple of reasons. One, feels like the perfect guy basketball-wise to really take them that next step. And maybe that's another thing. You know, the Nets dealt to the Mavericks. There were reports Joe Tsai didn't want to send Kyrie Irving to his preferred destination. This feels like the least contending team. Like if he would have sent them to the Clippers, the Suns, even though the Suns have had their issues this year, but they are, you know, have been a perennial contender in there. But you think Clippers, Lakers, while the Lakers have sucked, you get it. You put them with LeBron, AD, everyone's going to think they have a championship. It's the place he wants to go. Little petty there for him. So all those West teams certainly are a lesser pill to swallow than sending him to the team that's 2 spots back you in the conference. So that's another thing. On top of the idea that maybe you didn't have the attractive assets, imagine being that team and then also you're chasing the Brooklyn Nets, or you may have a potential playoff matchup with the Brooklyn Nets. It's a little bit of an easier pill to swallow if you're like, well, we wouldn't face them unless they made the finals, and we don't think they're going to make the finals. So you had a lot going against you, I think, in this Kyrie Irving thing. The only thing I wanted to push back on for Miami is saying, like, hey, I don't know, it's Kyrie. Like, dude, no, come on. Like, we're talking about you owe it to Jimmy Butler, to Bam Adebayo, to go make the upgrades that you can at this point to make a run. We tried run it back. It's gone pretty seesaw. You know, it's gone, you know, it's had a lot of downs. You know, they've been able to buoy some stuff, but it's mostly on the back of your top 3 guys. I mean, it feels very much like they need to make some kind of upgrade come trade deadline day. I don't know what. I don't know if it's going to be a John Collins. I don't know if it's going to be, you know, a Kelly Olynyk. Doesn't sound like it's going to be a Bogdanovich. But they got to add a little bit of muscle, and they got to add a little bit of shooting. They just have to. If they're really serious about doing anything this year, you can't come out of Thursday and say, we're adding Big Yurt. That's our big acquisition. You can't do that.